speaking of a man who knows about all these corners and Ennis Rakestraw, for that matter, is our good friend, Mr. Scott Bischoff. He joins the program. Of course, he has his list of risers and fallers from the NFL Combine, and we appreciate his presence as he joins us so often. You can check Scott out. He's a Detroit Lions and NFL draft analyst at DetroitLionsPodcast.com, staff writer at FootballGuys.com. Links are in the description for all that. Scott, how you doing today, my man?
I'm good. I'm better than I was last time. I had COVID last time we talked, and it was probably very obvious to you guys that I had COVID brain going on because it was bad.
I give you credit. You joined even with COVID. You're a real one, Scott. Oh my
dude,
God.
it was bad and it was embarrassing. So I wanted to apologize to you guys first because you guys asked me a couple questions and it was just like, "What's my name? Who am I?" Seriously, it was a thing. So much better this time. Happy to join you guys. How are you all?
We're good, Scott. We're fired up. We are fired. We went to the combine. We got.
I saw that.
We got in our Scott Bischoff, our Russell Brown bag a little bit. We're checking out corners. We're taking little notes. We're trying to do as best we can. And I'm happy you're on today because we kind of discussed some of our own risers and fallers from earlier in the week. I'm curious who you have, and I'm interested. And we'll just kind of play off who you have, and we'll mention some that maybe we saw in our own.
Okay. And some of these guys are like, I would consider them out of reach for specific to Detroit, like a player like Quinion Mitchell, right? We would all go nuts if the Lions decided they wanted to give up what they had to move up to, say, 8 or 11 or 12, whatever, to take a player like Quinion Mitchell because of the size and the elite movement ability, running in the low 4.3s the way he did. I mean, that's checking boxes. I just don't think it's super realistic from a Lions perspective, but definitely he is a player I thought who solidified his position as maybe the first defender off the board. Another one I thought looked really good was Troy Fatanu, the tackle from Washington. There was some speculation earlier, I would say around the national title game. There was speculation about whether he was going to have to go inside and play guard in the NFL. And I think at this point, he's just kind of erased that. He's got 34.5-inch arms, plenty long enough arms. The arm issue thing is I don't know how long you guys want to talk about arm length, but
it's important. It's important.
It is, but it's a function of how well you move your feet. So if you don't move your feet and you don't have good footwork, the arm length can help you a little. But generally speaking, arm length is a function of how well you move your feet. If you move your feet well, you can get away with having shorter arms and you can be okay and you're fine. Specific to him, he measured great. Did you guys see any of the O-line drills, or were you already out of there by then?
So
we were out by then.
Yeah, we caught running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends.
Deep.
So you got the pretty ones.
See?
Yeah.
That's the one. If I had to pick, those are the ones I would go to see.
Yeah. You get it.
For sure. But he can play 5 positions. He can play either tackle position, either guard position. He could play center. His ability to move was different than a lot of the tackles on the field. And I think he went from, again, maybe 2 months ago, people thinking he was going to be a guard to he's a high-level player who I think is going to be in the top 15 range just because of the way he moves. He's an interesting prospect. Taliesin Fuaga, the Oregon State guard, I think is going to be a very early pick.
I think he's the best tackle.
I mean, if you're a Joe Alt fan,
besides Joe Alt, that's my fault.
No, because I mean, I think they're different players. Some people think that Joe Alt is too tall, and that he doesn't have some of the functional athleticism to hang because he is so tall. So you have to buy into his abilities, his athletic tools, to confirm whether or not you think he can live up to it, because he is really 6'8" and I want to say 6'8" and 5/8, right? With 34 arms, and
almost
he's
6'9".
huge, right? It's like normally tackles are 6'5", 6'6", and when you get a guy that tall, leverage is a problem. It just is. Really quick, explosive edge players and even tackles are going to get under him and move him, but he moves his feet so well. And so interestingly that he kind of mitigates a lot of that stuff. But Fuaga is the real deal. He is a really, really good player. I could see the Chargers at 5 just saying we're cool with him playing right tackle for us. We love his mentality. We love the fire, and just settling on that. And we don't even want to trade back. We want to run the ball, and he's a part of that. So I thought he looked really good. Some of the other ones who I thought rose in the process was Wisconsin center Tanner Bartolini looked really athletic. He is going to have issues with bigger, quicker, more powerful interior players at the NFL level because they're going to walk him backwards. But from an athletic standpoint, if you put him in an outside zone system where you're asking him to just run to space and block whatever shows up, he moved like a pretty rare guy. A player we talked about, I think last time, I don't remember, Mason McCormick, the South Dakota State dude. He's a dude. I mean, he just is a dude. I know it's a small school. I think sometimes, when we hold the small school stuff against players, I get it, but when you watch him on film and then you see the athletic stuff, I think we talked about the short shuttle being under 4.47.
Yep.
And he was 4.45. So he ticked the number there. That's a guy I think that I would be extremely excited about if the Lions grabbed him on day 2. Just knowing that he's going to come in and play right away as a guard, also as a center if you need him to play center. That versatility is huge with Ragnow's situation, with the injuries kind of stacking up. And Penn State tight end Theo Johnson looked ridiculous. I don't know what's in the water and up there in Happy Valley, but they produce athletic, freaky dudes all the time. Both Texas receivers I thought looked really good. Both have questions about how they fit in this draft. Like, are you drafting Xavier Worthy at 165 pounds? I know he ran 4.21. You guys got to see it. It had to be pretty cool to see. But at 165 pounds, Adonai Mitchell, I think, has more questions about his game, even though he's bigger, but he tested great too. And then Brian Thomas, the LSU wide receiver, I like his game. I think if if he ends up, let's say he ends up in Detroit and we all go nuts because they took a receiver in a good way. Like they need a receiver, right? It's going to take him a touch of time for him to figure out the full route tree. But the things that he does are his movement ability is really crazy. But he's got a basketball background. So if you watch his game, you can see it. So the little bit of the rebounding and his ability to get open comes from that basketball background. I thought he looked fantastic. The jumping, the speed, the athleticism, the quickness, all that, the footwork. He was dynamic. And the last one, it's Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
Loved him.
Great one. We should get our jerseys made now. The 40 was a bit of a surprise. I mean, he's quick, and we should have seen this. There's a play 2 years ago where Brock Bowers is running down the sideline. He's scoring from, say, 60 yards. And McConkey shows up in the screen like at the 20-yard line, and Bowers is around the 10-yard line. And they're both running full speed. And by the time Bowers gets into the end zone, McConkey's almost caught him. And it's like, this guy can flat out fly, right? So when you do everything he's done in the pre-draft process, which is blow up the Senior Bowl, all that stuff, come to the combine, you're an incredibly efficient route runner. You can do all of it as a route runner. And now you see the speed and quickness. It's like, okay, first round player Ladd McConkey. Like, I would think the Chiefs would be looking at a player like that thinking that's a dynamic player for us. But I think we talked about it last time too. I know he's redundant with Amon-Ra, but I think that's good. And Jared Goff loves reliability with his receivers, and Ladd McConkey is a very reliable route runner as far as where he needs to be and getting to his landmarks and being trustworthy. There were some players who really did not help themselves at all. Braylon Trice, the edge player from Washington, looked rough.
And he showed up lighter, didn't he? He showed up like 20 pounds, 30 pounds lighter than he usually
does.
I
just think he's limited athletically, and it shows up on film. It does. He struggles to turn the corner, but he went from a player that I know was being mocked early in the mock process to the Lions at 29 to maybe a third-round player at this point, just because he's limited athletically. You guys were talking about Rakestraw when I came on. He did not help himself all that much this weekend. He just didn't. He measured smaller than I think everybody expected. With him, there's a lot of media hype with him because he tackles. So, you watch games and he'll step up and hit, and it's like, oh, look at this corner, blowing people up, and
Evan Witherspoon. I've heard people say that.
Love that. They really do. So, but I think with what he weighed, which was in around 183, to run what he ran was not a great number. His teammate, I think, is a better prospect.
You put us onto him.
He's a good player. It's really, it's not a player that you'd want to take in round one, but if you're stumbling him into him in round two, that's good. Bucky Irving, the running back from Oregon, had just, when you come into the combine with size issues, everybody thinking you're too small, and then you're slow, it's not a good combination, right? Like, Scott Bischoff, bald and fat. Not great. Not a great look. No. And then the last one I had, and then we can get into the guys you saw, Audric Estime from Notre Dame. One of the weirdest workouts I think I've ever seen, because he jumped really good.
His 40 time was brutal.
The broad jump was good, but in the whole when scouts talk about stiffness, right? If you want to be able to, in your mind, for the rest of your football watching experience, to define stiffness in your mind, it would essentially be the way he looked when he ran his 40. Yeah, I have never seen a stiffer, like there was no flexibility or anything the way he ran. So that is stiffness right there, is what you see. And that's not a good thing. So, he came in heavy, and he did some good things. And I thought he was really good in college. I thought he was very productive. And I thought he would be, in range to be one of these, it's at the point where people are taking running backs now. It's a matter of taste. It's, what do you want out of that position? But for him to run the 40 in the 4.7s like that, it was just, it was not great. So, there were others, but those are the ones that kind of stood out to me.
Well, before the fellas get to some guys they notice, and I think I know where they're going. I'm going to go a different direction. Just bring up someone that I thought impressed, and someone that Lucas actually put the fellas onto, and that's Ricky Pearsall from Florida. Yeah. And Scott, I didn't know much about Ricky. I know he was at ASU. Herm Edwards loves him, absolutely loves him. He did 17 reps on the bench, which I think was 7th. Third in his vert was 42. First in the 3-cone drill. Third best 20-yard shuffle. 4.4 140. What did Ricky? Because this wide receiver class, Scott. There's probably going to be what you could say 20 guys you could probably rank in the first couple rounds. What did Ricky Pearsall do for his draft stock?
So I think he went from a player who was going to have to deal with competition in his draft slotted area to now being like the alpha in that group. So let's say there are 7 or 8 guys who are going to go in the first round. And then, the draft resets, and now it's Friday, and there's still a group of wide receivers who are available, who are really good players. And instead of being in the middle of that mix or being talked about in that mix, he kind of heads the mix just because of the athleticism and everything that he does do. Even if some players like even if McConkey were to fall out of that 7 or 8, whatever it is in round 1, I think the stuff that Pearsall has done on film and backed it up the way he did with that workout puts him at the top of let's say the second tier, meaning round 2 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So he's really helped himself, and he's put himself in an advantageous position. I think about like Ricky Pearsall in Carolina with Bryce Young, and it's not the greatest thing because you still need more, but I mean, it's a great start. He's a very good player. His workout was spectacular, and it matches the stuff you see on film.
What about you, Boone?
Yeah, so I have 2 guys here, Scott, and I want to see where you're at with both of them. One's kind of one that, and I think it's the same for all of us here, where we had these conversations when we were leaving the combine. One that kind of moved up draft boards, and one that potentially dropped. The one that moved up, I have here, Michael Gentry out of Michigan. It seems like I'm starting to see him more on some hopping. And Lukas is someone too who he's done mock drafts, and he thrown him in the end of the first round, second round now. And then obviously the other one here, and I've gone back and forth a little bit with some of the guys on the show here, but Coleman, to me, it is going into the combine. I felt like he was a potential, see him at the end of the first round, that Chief spot. If the Lions went a weapon, that Keon was in that situation. To me, it felt like he's kind of not going to go in the first round at all now, and it's more so second round. It didn't help his stock at all. What are you thinking on both of those guys? Is that kind of the right analysis on that from the combine?
I think you've got them both pegged right. So in having some conversations with others in the industry, the idea of, all right, you're at pick 29 and you need the best football player available, right? And there's an argument to be made that it is Mike Sainristil. Mm-hmm. I know he's undersized, but it's hard to see a guy like that busting. So he's going to play for you at some level on your defense. He's going to play at a high level for you.
Yeah.
I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about this because I would love for him to be a Lion, even if that meant you took him at pick 29. There's a part of me that thinks that he's not necessarily going to get past Dallas in this draft. Like if I were doing a mock draft of like, this sounds nuts, but this is a possibility, he would be a player I would put in there. The intangibles, the intelligence, all that stuff on top of the physicality, because I mean, that's the thing with him is that people are going to knock him for being a little bit small, but he doesn't play that way. He hits, he's very intelligent. He understands what offenses are trying to do. I like him as I don't think he's going to go in round 1, but I would completely understand if he did. And I think it would be deserved. He's a really, really good football player. I think one of the best football players in the entire class. Keon Coleman reminds me a touch of, do you guys remember the Kenny Golladay days in Detroit?
The days of hope. Days of hope.
He needed a player who was going to put the ball in a certain spot for him to be able to use his body, his big body, to box out defenders and make plays down the field. And as soon as either Stafford got hurt or he didn't have Stafford, all that went away because most quarterbacks are not going to give guys like that chances that are high danger chances. And he needs those. He ran a 4.64, 4.63, something like that, which is not
4.64.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like he's slow, but he's not super fast either. And then there's a little rawness in the way he runs routes where a lot of the stuff he does is contested catch because it has to be because he's not able to run past defenders. So it was a disappointing, I know he's been productive and all this stuff. It just was disappointing to see some of the speed or the lack of speed show up and how that translates to games. It doesn't mean that he's not going to work out as a good player. It's just he needs to go to the right place. Like if he was in Detroit, I would say there would be no chance of him being productive because Goff is never going to put the ball into a dangerous place, allowing Coleman to go get it. So he's going to have to find his way to a different quarterback, a different offense where they're going to ask him to be doing different things. But I think you're seeing it both ways the right way.
Yeah, Scott, and a player that, or actually two of them, and me and Jeff have even kind of discussed it, and I made fun of them at first because they were going in the 20s. I'm like, how are these two players dropping in the 20s of your mock draft? But I want to get your opinion on one, edge rusher Jared Verse, and two, edge rusher I believe it's Latu.
Yes.
The edge rusher out of UCLA. I like both of these prospects, but you look at the teams 10 through 20 as the draft stands right now, a lot of them either A, need offense, or B, need help in the secondary, so I don't see them taking edge. Where do you see those guys falling in the draft after the combine?
So, to me, I think edge rusher number one is the dude from Alabama, Dallas Turner.
Yes.
And Verse then fits in there. Florida State, ACC, he's got good size. He's got all that stuff. I don't think he's crazy explosive. He's a good football player. It's just, how much our team's valuing that position and what I would consider to be a bit of a down year for the position. I don't love Verse as much as others do, though. So
okay.
I think he has to win with his hands, because I'm not sure he's crazy athletic with the first step. Like we see Chop Robinson, and he's so athletic with the first step, but he doesn't win with his hands. Where Verse is the opposite. He doesn't have that first step, and he has to win with his hands, but that takes time. I would think that those guys would be in the 20 range, like the top 20 easily. I mean, they're Verse specific. I think I would pencil him as a top 15 player.
Okay.
Who was the other one?
Latu. Because when I watch Latu, his hands are crazy. Like as far as like you're saying, winning with his hands, I think he has really good hands. I think he's explosive, but then obviously has the neck injury and the injury concern. So it's one of those things where it's like he's a great player, but to your point, this is a weak draft and there's other needs. So I just can't get a beat on where he's going to be.
And then you have Field Yates says he's the best edge in the entire class.
And I think for what you're saying about his hands, good job picking that up. His hand usage is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the ways that he wins is because he's never really engaged with the tackle, because he's always keeping himself kind of clean and being able to run and, to move where he wants to move, because because an offensive player's hands is not on him. He does have shorter arms, but his hand usage is great. It's very effective. I think I don't think he's prototype height, weight, speed guy, but I mean, he can move and he does everything you want to do, but you nailed it. The injury is going to be something that teams are going to have to get comfortable with. It did cause him at one point to medically retire. I think it's a neck injury.
Yep.
And now he's been back for 2 years and he seems to be okay, but there's a risk in taking him. I think he's the most polished edge defender in this class, just with his overall game, with the things that he does and his ability to win at multiple levels, whether it's winning outside with speed and quickness or winning inside through hand usage, playing with power, bull rush, that kind of stuff, speed, quickness. Yeah, he's got it all. It's just they have to get comfortable with the medicals.
And Scott, you kind of talked about Bucky Irving. It seems like this draft is more of a slim RB draft, and a guy that kind of made some noise, Blake Corum. Where do you think Blake Corum ends up? And I just wanted to get your thoughts of him at the combine.
He has a weird profile. He's like 5'7" and 207.
Stocky.
Yeah, he's a fire hydrant.
What a comp! I love that.
Yeah, and but he's not small. He's just short. I think the things that he does really well on film stand out, and it's obvious to anybody. He's much more instinctive in understanding leverage, understanding what's happening in front of him, and then reacting to that kind of stuff, where a lot of running backs will just run to the designed gap And at that point in time, let's say the guard got stonewalled, and now you've got a guard and you've got a tackle and a linebacker kind of in that gap. And the running back's mentality is, well, I just had to get there. And Corum is different. He sees that stuff almost instantly as it happens, and then just gets away from it. So to me, his instincts and his ability to process information is off the charts, to where I don't care so much about if he's short or he weighs 207 or he runs low 4.5s. I think if you're asking him to just run the ball and use leverage and his speed and his ability to make guys miss, he'll be just fine in the NFL. I don't think he's a workhorse player, so I think he's going to be he's going to be in a committee kind of thing. But an incredibly efficient runner with the ball in his hands to find open space and then to string that by making defenders miss, and also being very tough to tackle because he is so compact. It's tough to tackle 207 pounds in a 5'7" frame. It just is.
Yeah.
He's a good player. The running back class it's not great from, let's say, rounds 1 and 2, but there are some pretty good running backs in this class. Like Marshawn Lloyd from USC is a good player. He's a really good player. I think he's going to be a very productive pro. Jonathan Brooks is injured, but at Texas, he was great last year when he was playing. Trey Benson, I think, is going to bring.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, but
I was just saying, I think Trey Benson, when I just was watching him throughout the season, I think he's the running back in this class with his size and what he can do with his versatility. I think he's the running back that'll translate best in the NFL.
He's super fast. He's got all that stuff. He just runs so upright that he's going to take on contact. And I think he's going to be dealing with some injury stuff, just his running style. But then there's like Jalen Wright from Tennessee is a out in space weapon. As fast as he is, I think he's super interesting. We talked about Corum. Ray Davis from Kentucky is another player I think is a very good player all around. He's not going to blow the doors off you with really anything he does, but he does everything pretty well. So, I don't think we're going to see one in, say, the first round and a half. You might see somebody come up for a player like Benson just because of the speed, but I would say rounds 3, 4, and 5 are going to be filled with pretty productive running backs who have a chance if they get into the right system.
What do you think, Scott? I'm just going to ask this real quick for Jeff too, because Jeff, I think, fell in love with someone at the combine, Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. If we're being honest, so all of us saw him out there, and he's a big dude. Like he looked like he's going to be a problem in the NFL, and no one's really talking about him much. But if you just saw him there, he looked like he's going to be an issue. Like, he was way bigger than every running back there, and it was very clear, and he looked pretty fast. And I don't know what his 40 was, but when they were doing skill drills, he definitely stood out over a lot of those guys, especially guys that like are ranked higher than him in all these rankings.
That's a workhorse, Scott. That's a workhorse right there.
It is a work. He is a huge guy, and he's fast and build up speed and all that stuff. To me, he needs. If you remember back in the Leonard Fournette draft, Fournette needed time to get up to speed, and once he got up to speed, he was very dangerous. We all have seen the videos of him just running through SEC defenses. But if you were able to get him to stop his feet in the backfield, it was dead for him. It was over. So with Braylon Allen, there's some of that. You guys are right. He's huge. I think he measured fine. He verticaled 32, put up a bunch on the bench press. I don't think there's anything real splashy about what he does. I just think that, he is, he runs with decisiveness. He'll bounce off tacklers. He's very tough to bring down. Some of the analytics with where running back play is the more forced missed tackles you make, the more effective a runner you are. And he is a guy that forces players to miss tackles because he is so hard to get to the ground. If you're telling me that David Montgomery is going to be leaving the Lions soon, and you need a complement for Jahmyr Gibbs, Braylon Allen would be one of those guys I would be very happy to take on just because of the play style, right? So
continue, Scott. Let's continue.
What's that?
No, I said continue. I just like what you're saying.
Are you liking what I'm saying?
I did say, Scott, I don't want the Lions to take a running back. I got a whole thing on it, Scott, about running back. I think it's a lot to get into right now. But what you're saying about Braylon Allen, I just think he hasn't been talked about. I feel like he hasn't been talked about enough. It's like it's. I get why it's been Blake Corum. I think he's already won. But Braylon Allen, to me, they've got Jalen Wright and all these guys. But I think Braylon's going to translate well, or he's going to translate really well.
He can. It's just he is going to be one of those guys who needs tons of volume. So
yes,
he's going to need the 20 plus touches a game. Is he going to get that somewhere? I don't know, but he definitely, to me, he's a north-south guy. Don't ask him to change direction. Just roll through people.
Bulldozer.
Yes. Yeah. And that's good. I mean, second and 6 is good. Right. Yeah. That opens up to keeping yourself in good down and distance is good. So, I mean, I like him too. It's just he's not anywhere near as athletic as some of the other bigger backs are. But, like Marshawn Lloyd from USC was, I want to say in the mid 220s and ran 4.46. And he can do all that real heavy run with power stuff, but he also can make you miss and catch passes out of the backfield and be a danger that way too. So that's the kind of stuff with Allen that you may not be getting. But I understand the idea of just a bulldozer type dude. Yeah.
Before you go, Scott, by the way, I appreciate you taking the time out for joining the fellas. Scott, it wouldn't be a segment here locally if we didn't ask about JJ McCarthy. So I'm just going to ask. I mean, you saw the pretty throws. To me, at least locally, and Booner brought this up, and he is right. Nationally, I think people wanted to see the arm. I think locally we know what he can do. It's just about what he was asked to do. And now you're seeing JJ mock top 5. I think at this point he's going to go top 10. What do you think JJ did? I think the biggest thing that he did at the combine, Scott, was absolutely crush the interview process. And I've seen some people say he's QB3 over Drake Maye. I mean, where are you at with this stuff? I know it's a little crazy. Where are you at with it?
No, Scott? It's not. I mean, I would 100% have him as quarterback 3 over Drake Maye right now. I would. I would. There's some stuff in Maye's game that is just like, I don't know. He has a very strange release, and almost a secondary move inside that release so it's got a really long release where it takes a long time to get rid of the ball. And then he brings the ball closer, almost like in front of his shoulder. And then it's a shot put out of there. So as much as we talked about him as, a guy with a great delivery and power, a strength, arm strength for days and all that stuff. I don't necessarily see that. I think that he has a very unique, strange delivery that takes a long time, that's muddied by bad footwork. And those things aren't necessarily things that you can fix. I mean, if you've been throwing the football a certain way for a long time, it's really tough to change that without changing a lot of other things. But right now, for where he is, I don't think he has great footwork, and the delivery is too long, and it's not consistent enough. And there are just times where the misses are so bad, it's just ugly. But I get it. I hope that doesn't sound hot takey. I don't mean it to, because I still think he's a reasonable prospect. But of the 4, I would have him 4th. And I can understand why JJ's rising, and I think you nailed it. It's the whiteboard stuff, the stuff that we didn't see, where he's talking about. There's a story about do you guys remember the throw he made against Michigan State where the linebacker turns his head?
Mhm.
Yep.
That throw was something
Right
that
in the middle.
he individually spotted that linebacker doing that stuff on film and asked them to put in a certain play because he knew he could manipulate that defender and make a throw up the seam. And this is the kind of intellect that there is for a player who is super competitive and tough as nails and is all about winning. And you guys, I'm speaking, like NFL front office people love that stuff. So as much as he's rising now, I could see him rising even more and potentially getting to quarterback 2 range.
Oh my God.
I could, because Daniels is fine, but he's a little older. And do we really want to compare 21-year-old JJ McCarthy to 23-year-old, 24-year-old Jaden Daniels and compare them together? Because one guy's had 3 extra years of maturing both physically, but also learning how to play the game. And the other one does similar things, but, is a younger player and wasn't asked to do a lot at Michigan. I mean, Jaden Daniels wasn't asked to do all that much against at Arizona State, and he didn't do much in his first year at LSU. He had the huge year last year. So it's just like you can understand it. Like, there are things that make some sense as far as where JJ is. I'm a fan of his game. I like the cerebral nature and his understanding of what a defense is trying to do and how to beat them. I think you're ahead of the game if you're an NFL team, if you bring that guy in, knowing that he can run your offense for you at a high level.
Yeah, great stuff, Scott. We appreciate you. We'd love to get you like a weekly / bi-weekly Scott Bischoff segment leading up to the NFL draft. All right, let's do it. It's a lot of fun talking to you. Of course, you can find Scott and all the things he's up to at Twitter, of course, Bischoff_Scott. He's a Detroit Lions and NFL draft analyst at DetroitLionsPodcast.com and staff writer at FootballGuys.com. We'll talk to you soon, Scott. We appreciate you a ton.
That sounds good. You guys be well.
All right. You as well. Thank you.